Yeah, I'm sitting out on the front porch here at Rancho Deluxe East and thinking about Memorial Day. My story's actually quite a bit different than most folks who take the time to actually think about this. I'm from the Vietnam era generation, but never served active duty. And to be honest with you, by the time I graduated in 1970, I was I wasn't pretty, I was vehemently against the war in Vietnam. 65, when I was in the United States Naval Sea Cadets, I was very pro. A lot changed in those 5 years. I graduated and got drafted that summer. I was number 63 at first draft. Not first draft, excuse me, first lottery. And probably saved from going to Vietnam, even though I was legally blind in my right eye. They ignored that. I was in a pretty tough draft board, I will tell you. It was fairly famous. And I came to the last station, and this naval ensign, and I always have wondered if he hadn't served over there. But I have really messed up feet. As many miles as I walked as a firefighter, it was never fun. And he made me walk across the floor. I'm shortening this as far as the story. It gets a whole lot longer. But and it came back, and they'd passed me through all. I'd blown out my knee playing football. I was half blind, and they ignored those two things because my knee doctor wouldn't write a letter saying that it was damaged. I wish he was here today to fix it now. But this ensign looked at me and he said, you have hammer toes. I said, yeah, I know. And he goes, I'm going to reject you for that. And I looked at him and I said, well, does that mean I don't have to? Well, actually, to go back, he said, you would have to have each of your feet broken and reset, and then you could go in. And he kind of looked at me, and I'll swear he winked. Like I said, this is 1970. And I walked out of that office, and a weight had been lifted off of me that I cannot say, because I have spent my whole life trying to protect life. I was awful angry at our government and was in on some things that I won't talk about or am not proud of. One thing I am proud of is I worked with a bunch of veterans in Missoula. I was in a program called, it wasn't a program, it was just us, brother to brother. And I won't get into the details, but I also worked, our band played every benefit we could for the building of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in the Rose Park in Missoula for the state. And I will never forget this because there's a certain amount of guilt with being a historian and not having served. I certainly didn't want to die over there, but I know I owe them a debt. So, I was, like I said, I was a medic at the riots in Madison, and that was the first time I ever got tear gassed and beat up. Our job was to our job was to kind of, when the cops were beating the hell out of a kid, grab the kid. Of course, I was 18 years old at the time, so I was a kid. Knock the cops off of him and drag him into a house in the middle of Mifflin Street, if any of you have ever been to Madison or know its history. Paul Soglin actually talked to us to try and quell the riot. It got pretty nasty on both sides. I'm not gonna forgive our side either. If you knew what was going on, you knew what was going on. And that's a vague way of saying there was stuff going on, and I did know about it. And after the war, I said, well, what the hell am I going to do now? I'd been to Canada, played music in Canada, and I just didn't want to, I wasn't being chased. That would come later. But I just had to get out of here for a while. So I played music up in Montreal. I think I've talked about those stories a little bit. Gordon Lightfoot and playing in the coffee houses of Montreal. It was a hell of a lot of fun for an 18, 19. I think I was 19, maybe 20 by then. But I figured I would serve. It was how I would rebuild my life. I didn't know how the heck to do it. And by this time I was out in California, so I became a firefighter. Both on the volunteer department, actually it's paid call, and on the EFF, Emergency Firefighter Crew at Sequoia was where I started. That and working with CDF, California Division of Forestry back then. It's now CAL FIRE. And that began a 13-year career of fighting fire, mainly out of helicopters. We resented the hell out of having to walk. But also the helicopters occasionally did crash. I was never in one, although I was in one situation, which is another story, that we thought we might. But anyway, I was around people, unfortunately, who got burned up. Not me. I came close. I figure I never deployed my baked potato bag, which is what we called them, in that last ditch effort to survive. But I had it pretty damn near ready. Fire don't care. There's no honor in fire. It'll kill you if it can, or just if it does. So I've never been in combat, but I appreciated the heck out of watching the Memorial Day concert at the mall. I've been at the to the mall during the National Folklife Festival up there, and so I've seen kind of how it goes on, and actually got to watch Little Richard for 4th of July. But they at least mentioned, amongst honoring the soldiers and sailors, Coast Guardsmen, Marines, emergency service personnel. I won't talk about my PTSD, but it's a totally different one. And I honor on this day all the servicemen and women we have lost. I have stood in the Colville-sur-Mer cemetery being told the story of Technical Sergeant Frank Perigore, who won the Congressional Medal of Honor, with Mr. Hubert McConnell standing next to his grave with his hand on his grave. Hubert was a very quiet man from down in the Gate City area. And he told me that Sergeant Perigore, they were cut off outside of St. Lo. He'd survived the hell of Omaha Beach, and they were in on the attack towards St. Lo, which was a major objective. And they got surrounded. They got cut off from the rest of the regiment. It was the 116th, made up mainly of National Guard troops. And Hubert McConnell was loading tracers into a clip of an M1, and I've got an M1. I collect military weapons and have used them to teach the senselessness of war. But he was putting tracer rounds. He was going to sneak. There was a Tiger tank that was holding him down, and he was going to sneak around the front of the barrel of the tank and try and shoot down the barrel. This was a Southwest Virginia boy, by the way. And Sergeant Perigore stopped him, like any good sergeant would, saying, "You'll get your butt killed." He didn't say butt, I'm sure. I wasn't there. But Mr. McConnell told me the story of him while standing next to his grave in France. That's what I remember. Anyway, I kind of have rebuilt my life. I've been lucky enough to. I still get angry. I'm going to tell you about what. But on this Memorial Day, I just thought I would honor our soldiers, sailors, Marines, and Coast Guard. And there are other outfits too. I have a couple friends who are Seabees, and they're nuts. But on this day, and it's kind of gray here in Southwest Virginia, Buffalo Gap, Wise County. But there's an awful lot that I think is positive anymore. If you were gathering in the Gap last week, you know why. There are people actually starting to say that Big Stone Gap is a music mecca. And I've been here 30 years. Nancy came out to Montana. I found her and chased her back here. Been an interesting life, but on this day, I think we should all take some time and think about all the people who've defended us in all the different ways, even with being strong enough to take an opposing position when you feel it's right. I honored them all, and there were plenty who lost their lives of all kinds. I won't say Happy Memorial Day. I wish the hell we didn't have to have it, but on this Memorial Day, I send you my spirit in the hope we all can figure out with what's coming down the road with this next election to not beat up on each other, but have each other's backs. It's the old Ranger turning you loose. I don't know how much you'll listen to of this, but God bless you all, whichever